Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Legend of Korra Extreme Difficulty video walkthrough. This is Chapter 2, it's called Powerless, and we're traversing this crazy brown-esque beige city that reminds me a lot of Twilight Town from Kingdom Hearts. Or Kingdom Hearts 2, sorry. And our first encounter is up against these green dudes. These blue guys here can throw the boulders at you, but the best thing to do when anybody throws anything at you on this game is to riposte it. It's to wait for it to touch Korra, and then press the block button. You will then parry the projectile back at them, and it'll enable you to do some fun things. For instance, against those guys, you can do an execution move by pressing B, and if any enemies are near them, you can stack that execution move's damage into damage on surrounding enemies. So a really great strategy in this game is to stun an enemy, wait for his friends to get close to him, and then execute him and hurt his friends with the execution. It's a pretty interesting system of chaining attacks, but you're not going to see me doing too much of it just yet, because this is on New Game, and this game and this difficulty was designed to be played with all of Korra's abilities. And I don't have any of them because due to a storyline conceit, they've taken them away from me. And I'm not going to insult your intelligence by telling you names and places and things because I just don't know them. So instead, all you need to know is Steve Blum attacked Korra and now she does not have her ability to do bending maneuvers because he's a chi blocker or something and all that crazy bending stuff. And what this generally means is I'm going to run around this level that looks pretty much like this throughout, smashing pots to get currency, doing a little bit of platforming, and doing a whole bunch of fighting. It's kind of tough as well, it's a lot trickier than you would think it would be. Especially early on because I have no moves, so I have no real abilities to do combos or anything. I'm very limited at this point, but I'm going to utilise the counter mechanic and show you the best way to go forward. So these red enemies are the guys that you want to watch because they have a handful of attacks. The one you really need to be aware of is when they do the electricity because it has wicked range. Whoever decided these enemies should get that electricity and have that much range is an evil person. Because not only do you have to hit them 2 to 3 times to interrupt it, but while you're doing that, another one is doing it, so you'll probably get hit anyway. And taking damage on extreme happens thick and fast. And there are some issues with certain aspects of the combat, but none of them are the things that were mentioned in the reviews that I've read so far. And if you want a good take on the Legend of Korra review, I would definitely recommend checking out game trailers. They give it a much fairer chance, they don't compare it to a game it was never meant to be, and they highlight some of the legitimate problems. Like, the people who are saying the combat in this game is clunky tells me that those people have never played these brawlers with clunky combat, because just because it's not as fluid and as diverse as things like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry does not mean it is clunky. This game is pretty much Metal Gear Rising with a different aesthetic and not as many moves. It is a stripped down, refined, simple, yet fiendishly responsive and fun combat system that people just seem to be knocking for the sake of knocking it, and it's ridiculous because that's just not true at all. And one look at this video will show you that it's not true. The counter mechanic that's got too tight a window, what the hell do you see me doing? I am reliably doing counters. The window is tight because it's a powerful maneuver and it's meant to be tight. It's to reward skill rather than being a mashy idiot. This is not a game you're meant to button mash. It's a game you can button mash, but you're not intended to do so. And the parry window is interesting because the enemies will glow red and then they'll do an attack, but they have a handful of different attacks they can do. The first one is a wait and then a punch. The second one is a super immediate kick, which is the fastest and most difficult. The third one is a drop kick like that. And then the fourth one is a little kind of duck and weave into a big combo, and the duck and weave I think is the worst because they can hit you with it at a range that it doesn't seem to have. It almost has a vacuum principle on it and it kind of sucks, so be very careful. That was it just then. He does a duck and he immediately attacks. For some reason though I didn't do the riposte, which was interesting. But the counter-attacking system on this game utilises something that I think is genius. It gives you, for all intents and purposes, a quick time event to do. But it's quick, it's fast, and it makes you feel empowered. Admittedly, you're going to see it a lot if you use it a lot, because there's not that many animations, but these are things that, you know, a bigger dev cycle and a bigger budget would have fixed. And as it stands, there's just enough for there to be more than one, essentially. And this mechanic for me opens up the notion of greater and deeper and more interesting things which I wish the game had. For instance, it would be nice if we could change via the equipment what the riposte was, so we could buy new riposte actions, you know, elemental ones, different ones for different situations. And I would take it even a step further. I would take it into a even more complicated direction of, you know, keep the whole picking what your riposte is for different situations so you can fully control it, but I would have it so that instead of giving you the QuickTime prompt, it gives you a window of about, you know, 5 seconds or something, like it seems to give you when it slows down, and then it was up to the player to input the command. And because it's such an isolated moment where you can't move or you can't really do things you don't want to do, a la jumping and things, you could have done Street Fighter inputs and had a whole level of extra technique or technicality to it. You could even had counter chains where if you land the first one, there's a window after it to input another command to then chain it, and you know, you open up an ocean of possibilities with that kind of feature. And that was the first thing that came to my mind when I was using the counter system on this game, and I really enjoy it because it's Metal Gear Rising but a little bit different. And I love counter systems, and Korra has a fantastic one. And these items, if you're wondering, when you fight those crates, depending on how much damage you do, depends on what items they give you. And they're entirely cosmetic, and they give you money at the end of the level. They give you the spirit energy to buy things. What we're saving for at the moment is 100,000 spirit energy, so I can get an equipment or an accessory item that will enable me to do double damage, but it'll cut my life in half. And you might think, well, cutting your life in half is insane, but it's not much of a trade-off on this game, because if you're doing well, you're not getting hit. And it's the same with a lot of Platinum games, you know, you're not getting hit. I'm going to get hit, though, because this game is quite new, and I didn't have a lot of time to get too familiar with it. And there are a lot of techniques in this game that I stumbled across that I'm not really going to represent here because I can't, because I don't have the abilities to do so. But this is something I love. Whenever the enemies, particularly the benders, this guy here is a flame bender, which sounds wrong, doesn't it? He's a massive bender! No, he bends the element of fire, you perverted viewers. And he's essentially the elite that you're going to fight, and he can block. You can also taunt him to make him block more. It's not as good as it sounds. I wish it was a lot better than it is, but when you start doing combos on him, he has a tendency to block. If you continue to attack, he can counter you, and when he does counter you, it does this really cool, interesting QuickTime event of dodging and pressing directions and things, and then afterwards you do a massive blow to him. Believe it or not, that is the best way to fight those enemies. If you have 3 of them, and you will fight 3 of them at the same time, because they're very dangerous, especially on Extreme, especially from a new game, you want to get in as quick as you can. You want to do some combos. It doesn't matter what they are. You can just press X if you want to, just to lay some damage. Watch for what they do. If they attack you, try and dodge it. If they don't, just pray to get the stun. And if you get the stun, you can do the execution move and do massive damage. If you don't get the stun, they'll probably counter you, and that's exactly what you're going to go for. Attack them till they counter, and then counter them. And if you have any of the other benders with them, you'll knock those guys away as well, and it's a super useful ability to have. And this game doesn't have that many abilities. You're not going to be buying too many techniques. There are techniques to be bought, and one of the coolest things about this game, especially in late game, is when you have access to all the elements, you can switch mid-combo between them. You can chain them together. You can even switch when you're charging them to do the just releases to get extra damage and build your is it Chi, the bar that she gets? Which I haven't explained because I don't have it yet. But essentially, when we level up some abilities, we're going to be able to do charged attacks that will power us up and put us in a state where our standard attacks do interesting animations and more powerful versions of themselves. If you've played Bayonetta, think of them like the Wicked Weaves. If you can chain combos correctly, and if you can keep those perfect charges to keep that chi bar up, you'll be able to do much more devastating techniques, and it will manifest stuff that looks quite simple, like 1-2 hit combos, into much more dangerous variants of themselves. And it's an interesting balance of offense and defense, because you can even charge these abilities and then cancel into an evade and keep your charge. So if you look for it, folks, there is a lot of depth here. It's nowhere near the same as Platinum's normal games, but as I tried to elucidate in my first video, this is essentially a teaser for what a Legend of Korra IP could be if it had the time and the budget that it deserves. And they got a lot of things wrong, admittedly, and that's the reason why I don't think this game deserves anything higher than perhaps a 7 or a 6. But none of that is anything to do with the combat. The only thing the combat for me does poorly is there's not enough of it. Like, the enemy diversity is what it is. There's not many dudes to fight, but the people you do fight I find interesting. Every single one except for the spirits that have turned up on this level that you can see now. The spirits, do you see that then? If you watch that again, look at his attack. He's actually hitting me with the particle effects and not with his fists, which, once again, Platinum are usually tighter when it comes to that kind of thing, unless it has an intentional particle effect like fire or something. And there are a few instances in this game where the level of polish and the level of detail that you usually get in these systems from this developer aren't quite as high as they often are, or I find them to be. And it's just another one of the flaws in the title. But once you stun the crazy spirits, what these big guys here do, they go into the ground and they come up beneath you, but if you're moving they can't hurt you, which is pretty useful. You'll notice they have an aura around them. At first I thought it meant that you could use a certain element to do more damage to them, but it doesn't seem to be enemies with any kind of affinity, which you would think there would be considering it's a game about elements. And the only circumstance where elements really come into play is up against the last boss, and it's a pretty interesting fight. But as far as boss battles go, there's not that many in the game. There's a lot of reused enemies, there's a lot of slightly bigger enemies that they reuse as well, but there's only one real boss, which I think's a little bit disappointing. The game itself seems like it was perhaps one level that they stretched over the course of 4 hours. Like, it almost seems like they were asked to do something and then they had to elongate it to make it a game, and thus you get sections like those endless runner moments, which people seem to hate. Maybe it's because I'm not a phone guy and I don't have any of them on the phone that I really don't mind it. It reminds me of games I used to play when I was younger, on like first generation PCs, you know, back in 95 and MS-DOS and shit, and they always came with those crappy family friendly trying to teach the children built-in games. And one of them was called Adibo, I don't know if anybody remembers, and there was a level where he was on a minecart and you could move between the rails and you had to jump, and it reminds me of that. And it's this kind of beautifully irreverent and kind of out of place section in the game, which a lot of people seem to dislike. I kind of just, I don't know, it's a reflex test. It's a distraction between the combat, and you'll find with a lot of games nowadays that these distractions generally miss the mark, but I really don't think the Naga sections are all that bad. I think the mandatory boss fight is a little bit unfair, because it's probably the hardest part of the game on Extreme, because you can't make a single mistake, and it involves jumping, which is interesting. But this right here, I'm hoping it's a Legend of Korra fiction thing, but there's puddles of this blackness on the ground, which I assume is some kind of negative evil energy that does something. But in this game, it's an area of denial. If you step in it, you'll take damage. It turns up late on in the game on your first playthrough, but on Extreme it turns up quite a lot, and I don't understand it at all. It's that thing of, did they really need to make this more difficult than it is by making it so that I can't step in certain parts of the level? Like, between these enemies and those spirits that are diving into the ground, I have my hands full, because I have all the base combos with no elements. And if you were to play this game on the first level, or the first 2 levels, because the first level's the abilities before they steal them from you, you could easily say that the combat in this game is mashy, has no diversity, has no combos, has no depth. It would be a very easy thing to do. It would be ignorant and misleading, but it's easy to do it because you don't. There's very little to it. All you have is the precision of the evade and the precision of the counter. The combos aren't really going to do much. As you can see, I don't have too much, so I'm not really doing too much. I'm just kind of comboing and countering. But as you unlock them, so too does the game. And I think probably the biggest mistake that Platinum made was perhaps maybe not even their fault, because the story itself has Korra having her abilities removed. So what the hell do you do from there? Except give her more combos, give her more abilities and variables that will make her more viable as a player early on. And then you come across this interesting hurdle then, where it's this thing of, with abilities to show you what you're going to be, we've then stripped you down and humbled you. It's all about mitigating the strength at that point to keep you constantly feeling like you're being powered up. And I think the game does a pretty bad job of that, because you get... It's literally the last level where you get all your abilities back, and at that point they give you this ability called Avatar Mode, which I don't know if this has anything to do with the fiction, if it's a legitimate thing, or if it's just the equivalent of like a a Dante must... What am I saying? A devil trigger, Jesus, mechanic, or any mechanic where your character powers up, which a lot of these games have had. It's insanely overpowered and kind of ridiculous. I don't understand it at all. It seems like something that's been shoehorned in, and I wonder if it's part of the fiction. It looks interesting, and I'm sure they could have done something really interesting with it, but as it stands, it's kind of like that fuck you button that removes all the skill from the game, and admittedly, a lot of the skill in this game comes from things you really don't need to do. And one part of the review that I really did agree with the guy was the button mashing aspect of it. Once you have a powered up Korra, you can button mash your way through the game, and until that point you kind of can't. And a lot of people seem to think that I'm having a go at IGN and GameSpot because they're shitting on a Platinum game and I'm a Platinum fanboy, and it's nothing to do with that, guys. This game has issues, it does, but it is not 3 out of 10. That was my problem. They've given it a score that tells people who are easily swayed by reviews that the game is completely unplayable and bad, and I'm sorry, but it just isn't. Objectively, this game is completely playable, and I've had more fun with it in my 2 campaigns than the 50 hours I put in Destiny. Does that mean Destiny's a bad game? No. Does that mean Korra's a bad game? Apparently, by IGN standards. And the only difference here is the expectation, the hype, and the budget. Like, imagine if this game had Destiny's budget. Do you really think all the criticism that people had would exist? They wouldn't. Yet Destiny gets like a fucking 7, when it deserves a 7 because the shooting mechanics are fantastic, but everything else on that game is fundamentally underwhelming. Yet there's these people, a friend of mine, Aiden, is obsessed with it, and I ask him why he's obsessed with it, and he honestly can't tell me. It's kind of like an abused spouse. He's obsessed, but he's bored the entire time until the loot drops, and he's addicted to the loot. Like, that to me is madness. It's mind-boggling. And I'm not saying that this game is amazing, but it ain't a piece of shit. And that is the distinction here, people. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's bad. I don't like Dynasty Warriors, but those games aren't 3 out of 10 because there's too much to them. They might be the same thing every single year, but that's what their fans love. And that thing that they are is nuanced to be exactly what it is. And that's why they get 5s and 6s, because they're given a fair shake. You know, they're not giving them 1 out of 10 and saying that they're worse than cancer. It's just, I don't understand it, and people are having a lot of fun bashing something, and a lot of the Legend of Korra fans are suffering because of it, because they've been waiting for a decent game to play, and they finally have one, I believe, that isn't really going to do much for them on the Korra side, but it's definitely going to do something on the gameplay side if they enjoy combat. And then you look at other games that have these kind of licensed stuff, they're all a piece of shit, like Ben 10 and all that kind of stuff. They're all childish, they're all neutered, they're not very good games. Like, even that Berserk game that I was playing is a pretty bad game, but my love for that show made it much more playable than it probably was. And I don't have that here, which tells you that there has to be something more to the game than a fucking 3 out of 10. God damn it. But thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.